the f?
Welcome back. Those that follow my channel know that I recently purchased a Rivian R1S. I did a full feature and delivery video. I'm going to drop the link to that video in the description of this video if you're interested in checking out all of the features of the R1S. But today we're going to be taking a look at build quality. We're going to be taking a walk around the vehicle, checking out things like panel gaps, plastic fitment, glass, the roof, interior, PPF application, pretty much all of the build quality features of this vehicle to see just how well Rivian builds their vehicles. Now I will caution and point out this is one vehicle, so it's a small sample, but it's the only sample I have here today. I will tell you to take a look at my friend Kyle Connor's out of spec detailing channel, where his friend Colton goes over an R1S more comprehensively than I even am going to do here today. I mean, the guy spends like 45 minutes scrutinizing every little detail. I'm going to actually take a look at some of the things that he had noticed there were problems with on his R1S, which was an early build. He had one that was only number 850. My R1S here is in the 5,000 region, actually the mid 5,000. So Rivian has had a few more months to build these guys, hopefully improve on build quality, because Colton actually found quite a few problems with his. All right, so now let's do a walk around, check this guy out and see just how well Rivian built the R1S for me. This video, as well as all of the videos here on State of Charge, is sponsored by Qmerit. Once I've helped you decide which electric vehicle charger you're going to buy, then follow the link in the description of my videos and have Qmerit install it. All right, so first up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the problems that I've had on initial delivery, as well as what Colton saw on the R1S that he checked out. Now, as I mentioned, he had a very early build. It was number 850, and there were a couple issues with the vehicle immediately. The door handles didn't present, and not all of them all of the time. It was weird. Some of the door handles presented sometimes, some of them didn't, and then on other occasions the same door handles would work or not work. I haven't had that problem at all with my R1S for about 3 weeks now, and all the door handles present all of the time. They lock properly, so at least my vehicle does not experience that issue. Another issue that Colton noticed was that there was a paint chip, and it wasn't done by the owner because it had clear coat over it. I thoroughly inspected all the paint on this vehicle. There's no paint chips like this. As a matter of fact, the paint is excellent. There's no orange peel. There's no drops in some of the corners that you notice, even on other luxury brands. Rivian really nailed it. The paint quality on this vehicle is definitely better than the paint quality was on my R1T. And then there was another problem that Colton noticed, or the owner told Colton. The front passenger door would slightly rub against the front quarter panel when it opened, so much so that I think it wore away the paint. And they had to have a Rivian service call, and they had to reset the door. So that's not present on any of the doors on my vehicle. Everything opens and closes fine. The hatch, the hood, nothing binds, so there's no issues there. But it's not that I didn't have any problems. I actually have a couple problems that I had to initiate a Rivian service call, and they gave me an appointment about 10 days after I initiated the call. I haven't had that service yet. I'm in the middle of ordering the service and having them come. They're coming next week. But one of the problems I've noticed is that, and I can't not notice it, because the air suspension is extremely loud when it airs out, when it releases air. And I've had an R1T, so I kind of know how this should sound, but on my R1S, it is so loud that there's definitely a problem there. So listen to this. So I sent the recordings to Rivian, and they agreed. They said, yeah, Tom, there's a problem here. It should not be that loud. They actually think a hose came off where one of the air hoses is supposed to be connection, and it disconnected, so it's just shooting the air out, and that's why it sounds so loud. I mean, it's so loud. My wife is embarrassed to like take it to a shopping center, because when she gets out and she has it in kneel mode and the vehicle lowers, everybody like within 80 feet turns and looks at you because it's that loud. It's even louder than it sounds in the video. So they think that that's going to be an on-site repair. So they're actually coming to my house with this service. I don't have to go to the Brooklyn Service Center, which would be terribly inconvenient if I had to because it's 50 miles from my house. That's the closest Rivian service center to my house, which is an issue with Rivian as well as other startups. If they don't have a robust mobile service, sometimes owners can be kind of left out in the dark because they might have to travel a long way to get their vehicle serviced. So they're coming to fix that. And also the passenger side front door, the rubber gasket along the base of the door doesn't set right. And I've tried to attach it. I've pressed it as hard as I could, but it just keeps popping out. So either the rubber gasket is defective or the metal track that holds the rubber gasket in place wasn't made properly and the spacing is too big so the rubber gasket falls out. Either way, Rivian said that they anticipate being able to fix both of these issues on site. And quite honestly, I expect that they can. The gasket should be a no-brainer. I could actually fix that myself if I really tried, but since they're coming out to fix the air suspension, I figured add that to the list and let them fix that also. And the air suspension, honestly, it sounds exactly like what they told me they think it is, because it really just sounds like a hose came disconnected because it's so loud. And it sounds like a big, 18-wheeler's air brakes when you hear it like just release when they're stopping. So in any event, I expect both of those things to be fixed. Hopefully they'll fix it on the first service call. All right, so those were the initial problems that require a service visit. Now let's take a walk around the vehicle and look at the build quality. First up, let's take a look at the panel gaps, because panel gaps seem to be all the rage these days. I don't think anybody scrutinized panel gaps in the past as much as they do now, mostly because of Tesla. When Tesla first started delivering vehicles, and even to this day, Tesla makes fantastic electric vehicles. I've owned 2 of them. I loved both of my Teslas. But the one area where Tesla is still lacking is build quality, and customers don't seem to mind it because they're selling as many vehicles as they can make. But both of my vehicles had panel gap and build quality issues. One of them, a second Model 3 that I bought, actually had to go back because the doors were so misaligned. They stuck out like more than 1/4 of an inch were sticking out and misaligned. So they actually fixed that. And also the trunk, the hatch lid wouldn't close properly. It would kind of come down and bounce on both sides. And even once it was set in, it really just looked crooked. So, but they were able to fix it the first service visit, and it looked perfect afterwards. So I was satisfied with that. I don't know how something like that can get through final quality control, but it does with Tesla. And from what I understand, for most part, customers are satisfied when they correct it. So hopefully Rivian will have the same process. If something isn't to the customer standards, they can easily fix it. And I'm going to find out next week if they fix these 2 issues, which hopefully they will. So with that, let's talk about the panel gaps on my R1S. Quite honestly, I couldn't be any happier. The panel gaps on the R1S, and I've walked around the whole thing, are nearly perfect. I've had expensive BMWs and Mercedes that I've bought that weren't as good as this Rivian. Now, my R1T actually wasn't perfect. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as this vehicle. The R1S, as far as the metal body panels go, nearly all the way around are very good. However, there is one exception, and that's up front where the hood meets the headlights, this area here. Now, Colton also noticed in his R1S build quality video that the vehicle he tested, they were way off. Mine aren't really way off. This side is almost perfect, but when we come over here and take a look at the right side headlight, we'll take a closer look here. As you can see, the right side of the top of the headlight, the gap on this side is bigger than the left side. I can get my finger in here, but on the left side, my finger fits, but it's tight. So I'm nitpicking here, but this is probably the most egregious error on the whole vehicle as far as the metal body panels are concerned. Now also, since we're up here talking about the front hood, where the hood meets the front fender is also slightly off, but I consider this almost one issue because it is the front hood. If I press down on the hood, you can see the front of the quarter panel now aligns perfectly with the hood. When I come over here on the other side and do the same thing, it does the same thing. So the hood is raised a little bit slightly higher than this front point of the quarter panel. Now I wonder if once the gasket that's along the front edge of this hood is a little bit older and it's, used to being compressed all the time, if that'll pull down a little bit closer and now the hood will close a little bit tighter. If that's the case, this is going to line up perfectly, and so with this. Now the only issue is over here, this headlight still will be off. Even though it'll be a little bit closer, this side is still going to be a little bit tighter than this side. But again, that's nitpicking, and honestly, I don't think many people would even notice it if I didn't point it out to them. Now you may not have noticed before when I said how great the panel gaps were, I specifically said the metal panel gaps, because the same isn't true for the plastic trim. So let's take a look at the plastic trim now. So stepping a few feet back, everything pretty much looks great, but let's get a little bit of a closer look. Up front, this is actually pretty good here. This plastic piece is nice and tight, it's pretty well aligned. It slightly sticks out a little bit on this edge, but to me that's acceptable. Now come back a little bit further. Right here, slightly misaligned, but honestly, again, I'm going to give a pass on that. I think that's okay. Back here's where we have the problem. And this seems to be where Rivian has a lot of problems with the plastic pieces that go around the rear wheel trim. Take a look at this here. You can see the movement. Might not be able to see it with the camera, but there's a gap there between the plastic piece and the body panel. Then when you get to the way the rear door sits here, that always sticks out. You'll almost find that on every single Rivian. It always sticks out. And the thing is, it seems like it could be corrected if Rivian would have put a screw under here and tighten this up a little bit. It's held in with clips. And we're going to take a look on the other side where it does the same thing. Now coming back along here, everything fits nice and tightly on this side of the plastic trim. It's just on this rear door. I don't know if it's really showing up on the camera, but there's a big gap in there. I mean, it's more than 1 millimeter, and that could get brought in nice and tighter, I think, if Rivian were to maybe screw this panel, this plastic piece, instead of having clips that hold it in place. Come around the back, we get the same gap here in the bumper. Again, this thing is separated by probably a little bit less than 1 millimeter, but there's definitely room for dirt and leaves and stuff to get stuck in there. Around back, it's actually pretty good. The plastic bumper around the back seems nice and tight and straight, but then we get the same gap back here. As you can see, you could push it in and it'll close the gap. That's not great. But then again, this is probably the biggest area on the vehicle that has the most problems. Again, on the leading edge of this plastic piece, we've got a big gap. And then when you come to this part here where it lines up, the door is actually fine. I don't know if you could tell that the door is like perfect, the metal part of it. But then when you get down here to the plastic piece, it's really sticking out a lot. And again, under here, if they put a screw in here and pulled it in tighter, it would be perfect. But it doesn't have it. It's held on by clips. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the clips pull it in close enough. So those are the two big areas that I have the biggest problem with: the plastic trim around the rear wheels. Again, I don't know if that's showing up on the camera, but this is a significant gap on this side of probably 1 millimeter, and it seems fixable to me. Coming around on this side, again, this is not bad. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. The door alignment is nearly perfect. Up here, the plastic on the top is nearly perfect. It's just down this plastic trim along the base isn't great. On this side though, this front piece definitely sticks out. Again, probably 2 millimeters. This is definitely sticks out further than what the front door is. And while I'm down here, we're going to talk a little bit about the PPF. Rivian puts PPF on this lower section, and I tell you, on every Rivian that I've seen, the edge is peeling up like this. Literally everyone. It was like that on my R1S. Colton noted it on the vehicles he's tested. This is not hard. And this really, it's almost not even build quality. This is just, whoever's getting paid to apply these PPF just isn't doing it right, or it needs to be slightly smaller. It almost seems like it hangs over the edge, and on this side, it's all the way up to the front. So that's going to eventually get worse and peel and look like crap. So that's something that Rivian does not do well. I've noticed it on nearly every Rivian that I've had. Okay, up front, let's take a look at the charge port door. My charge port door on my R1T definitely was not aligned great, but this actually is. This alignment, look at that. It's nearly perfect, and for something that moves and has to swing open and closed, it's really, I'm impressed by this. They did a great job with it. The only thing I'll point out, and let's open this guy up. Oops, I guess my vehicle is locked. I didn't realize that. Hold on one second. Let me unlock it. Okay, back here now. Let's press this guy and it opens up. So it opens up great, but the only thing I'm going to point out is this. See this movement? Let me see. This seems to have more movement than my R1T's door panel had, charge port door. It really doesn't, it's either not secured as tightly as it should, or this is just the allowable amount of travel. But as you can see here, it really has a lot of travel. It's about a ½ an inch, maybe more, maybe 3/4 of an inch. And it just doesn't seem like it's tightened up as well as it should be. When the service techs come out, I'm going to have them take a look at it. But my R1T didn't have that much play in the charge port door. But, you know, this thing opens and closes perfectly. And as you can see, the gaps are like spot on. I mean, that's really a good job for a small panel like that that has to open and close all the time. All right, next up, let's take a look at the windows. I don't know how well this is going to come out on camera, but I've inspected all the windows and they're pretty well aligned. Everything is nice and tight. There's a little exception here. If you notice right here, this little rubber gasket here seems to be pulling away a little bit from the top. I don't know if you can really see that, but I mean, that's kind of minor, and I haven't really tried. I might be able to just push it back in, but you shouldn't have to. The rest of the vehicle, you walk all around, you look at the glass, everything seems to be seated perfectly. Great alignment there. No uneven gaps. All the rubber, all the gaskets seem perfect. So, you know, I give the window fitment definitely an A, as well as the leading edge of the windshield where it meets the top of the roof. Again, you probably can't see that super well with this, but take my word for it, I've inspected it up there. It's really, really nice and tight. And speaking up there on the roof, let's take a look at that next. All right, first up, let's take a look at this leading edge here where the hatch meets the top of the roof. Now, it's hard to see here. I'm going to take it at a different angle, but this piece here is kind of bowed up, and the top of the hatch really isn't. It is a little bit, but less. So what you get here is on the edges, it's just about even. This panel here sticks up a little bit higher on both edges, but in the middle, it sticks up quite a bit more. Now, quite honestly, I don't know if it's designed to be that way. I don't know if Rivian cares or designed it so that this is perfectly flat. It really doesn't matter. People can't see it. And Colton also noticed this in the vehicles he tested out. So I don't know if this is just a misalignment or if that's how it's designed. But I will point out that these plastic covers here on both sides, these cover the track that the roof rack clamp downs are on. They're not perfect. And what I've noticed is mostly you see in the corners, they're sticking out a little bit. The alignment going straight down is pretty nice and straight. It's just that when it gets to the corners, most of them stick up a little bit. Now you can push them down. You can see there's a lot of play in the corners of these, but they definitely stick up a little bit on the corners, aren't aligned. Again, up here on the roof, I'm not sure that really makes much of a difference, but we need to go over all this and show you exactly how everything looks, and you can decide for yourself what's acceptable and what's not. This doesn't bother me at all. I can't see it. It's nice and secured. It's not like it's going to fly off or anything, but it's not perfectly aligned. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts up here. When you look at this roof panel, you've got this gap here, then you've got this gap, then you've got these long pieces, you got the piece in the middle, the front glass, that cover over there, that cover there. There's so much going on. It doesn't surprise me that everything's not aligned perfectly, but the glass is, which is the most important thing for me. These plastic covers here, I really don't care if they're not perfect. Me personally, you might care, but that's why we do these videos, so you can just see what we're experiencing and make up your own mind on what's acceptable and what's not. Okay, so let's take a look at the other complaint that I have where Rivian Service is going to take a look at it, and it's regarding this lower door gasket here. It runs along the whole side of the vehicle. You might be able to see from the video, it's sticking out a little bit here. It's not snapped into the guard like it should be. Now you heard it snap, but as soon as I release it, now it's already prying out. You might not be able to see it fully, but it's just not sticking in there. No matter how hard I try to snap it in, it seems like it's snapping. You hear it snap, but it's already separating. And as you can see with one finger, I could just pull it out. So there's a track under here. This track, either this gasket here is deficient or the track isn't closed enough to allow it to snap in. Now it holds perfectly along the whole vehicle on both sides. It's just right here, this point right here, it won't stay connected. So I'm guessing it's this rubber gasket. If not, we could probably just take this track here and pinch it a little bit closed more, and then it'll hold it in. Quite honestly, I would do that myself if I didn't have Rivian coming out for a service call. I would just pinch that more and then pop this in. I'm sure it would hold, but since they're coming, let them look at it and let them decide what to do. I think they're bringing a new gasket. That'll be the first thing that they change, and hopefully that'll fix it. If not, then I guess the solution will be to just pinch that track closed a little bit more so it holds in, because as you can see, it just pulls right out. The rest of it holds on both sides. So that's a quality issue that needs to be addressed. Now, as for the rest of the inside of the vehicle, and let's take a look at that now. I have pretty much the same experience that Colton had in his video, and he basically said everything's excellent, and it really is. The fit and finish inside the Rivian is outstanding. So let's take a look at it. So the one thing that Colton noted in his video was that he saw cracks in the wood dash on the more than one Rivian that he's tested. I don't have any of them. I checked all over, inside here, the other side. There's no cracks in any of the wood that I have on the dash yet. Let's see if it dries out and cracks over time, but for now, everything's perfect. All of the stitching on the dash, the stitching on the seats, all the gaps, everything's put together. Absolutely top-notch quality. I guess it's hard to really see that in the video, but you know, I've pretty much scrutinized everything in here and everything just fits perfectly. We'll take a look in the back. The tolerances are so tight for everything. There's no panel gaps. There's no issues on any part of the interior of the vehicle. Quite honestly, this, to me, the build quality, interior-wise at least, is on par with any luxury vehicle that I've ever tested. And I've tested them all. You know, top BMWs, Mercedes, Range Rovers. The interior fit and finish is outstanding. Rivian gets an A+ as far as I'm concerned. The only thing I will point out is, if you take a look at this plastic piece down here. Now, it looks perfect now, and it is perfect now. However, when I got the truck delivered, it wasn't snapped in properly. And what I had to do was remove it and then snap it in place. So that was a little bit of an issue that, you know, whoever's job it was to snap that in didn't put it in properly. It literally took me 15 seconds to unsnap it and then put it back in place. But, you know, if you want to ding them on that, sure, it deserves to be noted. It didn't get delivered to me perfectly, but it was a very easy remedy. And also, let's come around to the other side. You'll notice all Rivians come with an LED flashlight, and that flashlight is always being charged here in the door. It works really well. You press it, it pops out. So now you've got a nice, really cool flashlight. However, when I had my delivery, it wasn't there. Rivian forgot to deliver it, and it was super embarrassing because Rivian sent their delivery specialist to do a delivery handover video with me. And when we got to the point where we were going to look at the flashlight, it wasn't there, and Anthony was so embarrassed. But hey, they made it right. They brought me a flashlight later that day. I kind of think I got the white glove treatment on that, though. I don't think the average customer would get Rivian to drive from Brooklyn to their house just to deliver the flashlight, but I can't confirm 100% if that's true or not, but I have to believe that I got treated a little bit better than the average customer would. But as far as fit and finish on the inside, I tell you, pretty much everything is perfect on here. And, you know, I've scrutinized, I've gone over the whole thing. Super job on the interior. Okay, so final thoughts. Overall, I'm very impressed with the overall build quality on my R1S. It's definitely a step above the R1T. If I were to give it a final grade, I probably would be talking somewhere in the B to B plus area. If we didn't have the initial quality problems of the air compressor sound and let's say that door gasket, probably be in the A minus area, and that's excellent for a startup. Building cars is extremely difficult. We've heard Tesla talk about, well, Musk talk about manufacturing hell. It's one of the hardest things to do is build an automobile. Even experienced automakers tell me this. When I interview the engineers and the people that are in charge of the factory and production, you know, they labor over how smallest detail can result in a pretty big defect in the vehicle. And it's why the old saying always was never buy a car in its first year of production. I mean, that's what my dad told me, you know, 40 years ago. I'd never buy a car in the first year of its production. Let them iron out the problems. There's always manufacturing problems. There's always engineering problems. The second year, they get them all worked out. You know, Rivian not only is in the first really full year of manufacturing vehicles, it's their first vehicles put out. And I know they have two vehicles, the R1T and the R1S, but they basically launched at the same time, months apart. And they are a startup still learning how to do this. And quite honestly, build quality on the Rivian is far superior than the first year build quality of Tesla vehicles. And that's not even debatable. And I'm not saying Rivian vehicles are better than Tesla vehicles. That's not what I'm saying here. Build quality, you can't even debate it. The Rivian in their first year is far ahead of where Tesla was. Now, can they scale up and build, you know, hundreds of thousands and then millions of cars and maintain the level of build quality that I'm seeing here? I'm not saying everybody's seeing it, but what I'm seeing on my vehicles, that's the $1,000 question or $1 million question. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to. As I said, manufacturing's hard, but we'll keep an eye on this and we'll see how Rivian progresses. I'm pulling for them as I pull for all electric vehicle companies. I hope they do well, but at the same time, I report fairly on them. And as I continue with my ownership of the R1S, I'm going to report fairly on what I observe driving-wise, build-wise, all that stuff you're going to get here on State of Charge, so stay tuned. Listen, if this is your first time here, don't forget, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.